Hello everyone, this is Chantal from glutenfreecooking123.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make Mediterranean cabbage rolls. Okay. So right here I have 2 cups of long grain rice. You could use any type of long grain rice that you personally prefer. I'm just using what I have right here, but do keep in mind that whatever long grain rice you use, you want to adjust the cooking time of the cabbage rolls according to the rice that you are using. Now with this rice, I do cook the cabbage rolls for between 30 to 40 minutes. It depends, because when they are in the form of rolls and they are compacted, the rice tends to take a little longer to cook. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The first thing we're going to do is just rinse this rice under cold water. And if you see any blemishes in your rice, or any rocks or anything, just pick it out. I like to do it when the rice is wet, this way I could actually see what's there. And usually it's pretty clean. I forgot to mention that before I started, I filled a large bowl with water and I brought it to a boil. So now I'm going to bring it back to a boil before I start on the rest of the process, because I do like to prepare my cabbage before I prepare the stuffing for the cabbage rolls. And this just allows it to cool down a little bit while I'm working on my cabbage stuffing. So right here I have a large head of cabbage, and I brought my scale to measure it for you guys to see how much it actually measures. I don't know if you guys can see, measures 2 pounds and 8.6 ounces, almost 2.5 pounds. So my water's boiling. I'm going to reduce the heat just so that I'm not wasting so much heat. What I like to do is I like to take the top leaves off. These are usually just blemished leaves and really tough. You don't really want to be cooking with those. And just any blemishes that I see that I don't like. I don't like this leaf, so I'm taking it out. And I don't like this. And sometimes the cabbages are not perfect, so you just kind of fix them later after you blanch it. So what I like to do is I make angular incision on the sides, 4 of them, so that all of them meet in the middle and form like a prism shape. This is not the knife that I want to be using, but my other knife is in the dishwasher, so that's what I'm using. Oops. What that does, it just removes the core from the middle, so that when I want to blanch them, I would just put the whole head in the water and peel the leaves one at a time as they blanch, so they're not connected together, because this is what connects them in the middle. So you want to remove all that core out. I used to, when I first got married, I used to take it one leaf at a time and then just get really frustrated because my leaves get ripped sometimes, and I just wanted them whole so that I can control the size and the shape of the leaf whenever I come to roll them. So I found that this technique is the best technique, and it is a little bit intimidating when you're coming to drop it in the water, but you just have to be really careful. And you know, the first time you do it, you might be scared, then it just becomes something easy after that. Okay, so this is what happened. I created a crevices in the middle right here, as you can see, and all the core is out, and these are the pieces. Now I like to eat that core. I just peel it off and eat the inside. It's really good. I eat it raw. And so now we're gonna drop it in our boiling water very gently. Sideways like this, I'm going to put it into my pot, and my pot is not filled all the way so that when I do drop this in the water, it doesn't spill out. There we go. So I'm going to submerge it under the water and just keep submerging it. And meanwhile, I'm gonna grab some tongs so that I can start taking the leaves out so that they could blanch easily. Okay, so I got my tongs. What I do is, let me bring you closer so that you guys can see. So what I do is I take each leaf out and then I let it blanch separately. I just take the first few leaves that just want to come out, and I'm going to get my sieve. I forgot that. I have my sieve and I just have this cover, or you can put it over a plate or something just so that it drips down on it. And I'm going to put them as you see, once it reaches this level where it's bending easily at the stem but not breaking, that's when you know it's done. And you don't want to overcook it, because if it is overcooked, the cabbage rolls will sort of fall apart after they are done, when you finish cooking them. Not when you blanch them, but when you are actually cooking them, when they are cabbage rolls. And they don't really taste good, because also all the nutrients would have come out of them. They just kind of taste bland that way. As you can see, this is really easy. I'm just grabbing the leaves, and here, let me put the sieve over here so that you guys can see. I'm just grabbing the leaves, and if I see that they're done, I just transfer them into my sieve. And just super easy. So I'm just going to keep doing this, and if I notice that one of the leaves just needs a little longer, I take it out, separate it from the head, the cabbage head, and I let it sit in the water just for a few seconds, and then I take it out. So this is super easy. I'm just going to keep doing this until the whole head is finished, and then I'll show you the next step. This takes about 5 minutes. It doesn't really take that long, even less time. So when you do reach the end, oops, this is a little connected. I'm going to just cut it off a little. You don't have to keep going. I just go until I reach this part and I stop. Turn off the heat now and take everything out, whatever is remaining in there. This might seem a little intimidating, making cabbage rolls, but it really is easy. So I'm going to take this water and just dump it in the sink, and we're going to keep this pot because that's where we are going to put our cabbage rolls in. And what I like to do is just run the cold water as I dump the hot water in, just so that I don't risk damaging the pipes. While our cabbage leaves are cooling, we're going to work on our stuffing or filling, whatever you want to call it. Our rice is rinsed, and right here I just thawed 1 pound of ground beef, and I'm going to add it in here. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt. Now you can add less. The recipe that's on my blog, I say to add 2 teaspoons of salt, but we're talking about me here and I like salt, so I'm just going to add a tablespoon of salt. But if you want to be reasonable, you can add less salt. We are also going to add chicken bouillon. Now, if you don't want to add chicken bouillon, you could opt to add at the end, instead of water, instead of cooking the cabbage rolls in water, you could cook them in chicken broth, and this way you don't have to add the chicken bouillon. I used to add these large chicken bouillons, and then I discovered that they actually had wheat in them. And for several years I was wondering, why am I still having the occasional headache? And I didn't know until I looked at that, and I'm like, oh, well, that explains it. So These, it says that one of these cubes, so this is the type that I use. It is Weiler's chicken cubes and it is gluten-free. And it says that 1 cube equals 1 cup of broth. So the other one was that I use was about almost as 4 cubes of these. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 4 cubes of these chicken bouillons. Now if you guys find a better gluten-free chicken bouillon that you like, let me know in the comments down below. So since these are hard, what I like to do is I take the chicken bouillon and I crush it in here. Oh, also, if you don't want to use chicken bouillon, you might want to add some parsley in here because they do add, I believe, I'm not sure if they add it in this one. Let's check actually. They do usually add parsley into the chicken bouillon. Let's see. It just says spices. Actually, I'm going to try to add parsley this time and see what it does. I don't know. I've never done it with this chicken bouillon type. So I'm just going to do it and see how that's going to work. So I'm just going to keep doing this to these chicken bouillons and add them in here. Okay, so we've added in our chicken bouillon. I'm just going to add a little bit of parsley in here just to try it out this time. About a tablespoon. We are also going to add a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. You could also use olive oil if you want. Now, you could add some extra seasonings if you like. I just like it this way. Some people might add maybe cinnamon, maybe allspice or 7-spice, or maybe all of them together. I personally prefer it this way. I like my cabbage rolls very simple. In fact, the original recipe suggests to use, well, not suggests, but this is how everyone made it. Since my childhood, this is how I remember it. My mom would add, during the cooking time, the last 10 minutes of the cooking time, she would add in crushed garlic and mint and lemon juice, and I hated it that way. And I never knew why I did. And then as I grew up and my taste buds developed, and I realized I don't really like it sour, which is weird because I love sour food, but that's the only, that's one of the foods that I just don't like sour. I just like it salty and simple. So this is how I'm doing it. Okay, so now we're going to mix our ingredients together and then we're going to start on the rolling process. You could use a spoon. I'm just going to use my hand just because I find that it mixes everything better. And you want to break up the rice because sometimes it just kind of clumps up, and if you thawed your meat in the microwave like I did, sometimes I get a chunk of meat that I overcooked maybe while I was thawing it. Or you could thaw your meat in the fridge overnight. But lately I've been just getting it out whenever I need it because I've been exhausted. I just not sure if I'm going to be able to do the dish that I planned on doing that day or not, because sometimes if something requires a long time to make, I just kind of delay it until I'm feeling better. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I'm just going to wash my hands and move on to the next step. So for rolling the leaves, this is super simple. These are small, so with the small ones you could just put the filling in here and roll. And what I do is I point the side with the stem towards me with these little leaves, and you don't need to cut the stem out with these smaller ones. So I just take them, fill it, make a little log like this, and then fold these two ends together and fold the end that's facing me over like this, and then roll. It's hard to tuck the ends of these, do it on the board, it's better. It's hard to tuck the ends of these cabbage rolls just because, you know, cabbage leaves are not exactly as pliable as let's say Swiss chard leaves or grape leaves. So this will have to do. So actually before I start with this process, what I like to do is I like to take my leaves and cut them to the size and shape that I want. And if they have a thick stem, I just take the thick part of the stem, not the whole stem, out like this. I hope you guys can see. And I just, if it's a little bit too big, I cut it in half. Now this wasn't really big, it was fine. But if it has a thick stem like this, and which prevents me from rolling it the way how I want to, I just cut that stem off. And you do want to save these stems because we are going to use them to cover the bottom of the pot so that the cabbage rolls don't burn while you are cooking them. Okay, so I'm going to do this to the rest of my leaves. And now they are cool enough for me to handle. So as you see, I just cut the stem off, the hard part, and then I cut it in the middle. And that's why I like to cook the leaves before I start mixing my filling, because by this time the leaves would be cool enough for me to work with them. And you don't want to actually stop the cooking process because as they sit, they just tend to soften a little bit more, just soft enough for me to roll them. Because if you do cook them, it's hard to, if you do blanch them a little extra for like a little extra minute or something, it's hard to kind of notice when that point comes where they become sort of softer than you would like them to be. So just blanch them until you see that they're pliable and take them out and just let them continue to slightly cook on their own as they sit waiting for you. Now if it's a really big leaf, I like to cut it in thirds like this. And this is not really big, but it was big enough for me to do that. For example, this is a really big leaf. The hard stem stops right there, as you can see, and I just take it and I chop where I stopped at the stem right there, and then I chop lengthwise this way, which creates a straight line on this side, and then I chop it in half on this side. So this gives me 3 rolls. And if you see that you have any blemishes in your leaf, now's the time to take them out. And if the stem is not perfect for you to use, you can also discard that. This doesn't seem so bad, it's just bruised. Okay, so now I'm done cutting them. I'm just going to put them back in the strainer. Now I'll take my stems. If you have a lot of stems, you could reserve some. If you have extra filling, you could just add them to the filling and cook those separately. Sometimes I do that, and the kids really like that. I like it too. It helps for a quick dinner if they're really hungry and I'm late on making dinner, especially when you're making something like this that requires time to do. So you just want to chop them about like a 1/4 inch thick. Whoa, almost cut my finger. Be careful. Okay, and I'm going to put them in my pot at the bottom right here. And I'm going to make a layer in the pot as much as I can, like this, just enough to stop the leaves from touching the bottom of the pot, because when they do touch the bottom of the pot, what happens is they tend to brown and give you this awful taste, and especially when they're sitting there getting cooked for like 30 minutes, and that you really don't want that. So just make sure to reserve the stems and chop them up and put them at the bottom of the pot. Okay, so I figured I'd just bring you a little closer so that I can show you how I do this. Line it up on either side, either this way or that way. I usually just use the side that I can fold a little, or if the side is cleaner, sort of, where I have more surface to roll. I take some of my stuffing here, or filling, and just make a small little log about half an inch thick, maybe, just long enough to fill the length of the leaf while leaving a little bit of space on each side. So I just take it, fold both sides like this, and then fold this side over like so. So let me try again, like this, and then roll. You want to roll using both hands, but I'm just trying to show you. So there we go. And you don't want to roll too tight because it will burst, because the rice will expand, and you don't want to roll too loose because it will just fall apart and the rice will end up everywhere. So I'm just going to set them aside here until I'm ready to put them in my pot. That's what I like to do. I just keep rolling, just repeat. And as you get the hang of this, it will become really easy. Like I said, it only requires a little bit of time. And once you get used to it, you get faster and faster. Sometimes I can't fold the other side, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be delicious. That's my rule when it comes to cooking. You could also put a couple and fill them. I feel like sometimes it just makes it faster. And roll. So I did end up with quite a bit of filling. Usually that doesn't bother me because I take it and I cook it aside with some of the stems. Like I said, right now I don't have any stems, and the outer leaves weren't good enough to do anything with them. So what you can do is your cabbage rolls. So I will adjust the recipe also on my blog, and make sure that I put maybe a little less filling, or instead of putting a little less filling, what I could do is I could let you know, maybe instead of using 2.5 pounds of cabbage, you could use 3 pounds of cabbage. That would probably be about the size of cabbage that you would need for this amount of filling. And this cabbage head wasn't really big, and it's kind of, sometimes, you know, you get a cabbage and sometimes the sizes vary. They're not always the same. Okay, so now that we have finished rolling them, we are going to place them in our pot. Okay, this step is super simple. What we are going to do is just take our leaves with the stem, with the seam side down, and place them in the pot. And I like to start up against the side of the pot and then just line them up like so. And place them sort of tightly up against each other because you don't want them to be floundering around in the pot. This is the fun part. So before I put down the first layer, before I move on to the next layer, I have here a head of garlic, and I'm going to just peel the first layer off, the skin I should say, off. And you don't want to peel the heads of garlic themselves, you just want to separate them, because you are going to place these heads, these cloves, sorry, in the pot with the cabbage rolls. And really, this is, I feel like, is the secret ingredient for the cabbage rolls. It just gives it an awesome flavor. And without it, you feel like there's something missing and it's not complete. So you definitely want to do that. And if you don't like garlic, I'm sorry. That's all I can say. So I just like to place about 5 cloves of garlic haphazardly around, kind of like spread them out in the pot. And then I move on to the next layer. The more garlic, the more flavorful it will be. And then when you cook them, don't throw these heads away. I like to eat them actually. I just take the garlic out of the skin and I eat it, and it's super delicious. And it's super good for you too. Okay, so I'm on the next layer. This head of cabbage really was small, so I'm going to put another layer of garlic, and I'm going to put a little more here because I think I only have one last layer. Okay. And what I like to do in my last layer, if I don't have enough to cover all the pot, I just like to put them in the middle. This way, when I'm going at the end, I will be putting a plate on top of them so that they don't float over the water. This way, because they're in the middle, they're not going to, the ones that are not touching the plate, they're not going to be floating around. Okay, so now it's time to put the seasoning on, and all it is just salt. You could add other seasonings if you like, but that's all I like. I just don't like a complicated flavor for this dish. I'm going to add some salt. I have the full measurements of this recipe on my blog, and I will leave a link for it down in the description box below. You guys can go and check it out and follow the exact steps and exact measurements. I don't measure when I cook. Now I'm going to add water, just enough to cover it, about maybe like a 1/4 inch high with water. I'm going to grab some more water. And yep, that's about it. You guys can see the water level where it is. I don't like to add too much water because then not all this water is going to boil off. And so the water is there just to cover it so that it would cook the rice. You don't want it also to be too dry because it wouldn't taste good. So that's just the perfect amount of water. And I take a plate and I just put it on top. If you have a plate that fits perfectly in your pot, that's perfect. And I push it down a little bit, and I don't know if you guys can see, it's about a 1/4 inch or half an inch over the, or like a 1/4 inch because I have another layer right here too, over the cabbage rolls. Okay, so I got this on my stove right now, and I'm going to turn it on high until it comes to a boil, and then I'm going to cover it also. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to reduce the heat to medium low. On my stove it would be at 2, and like I said before, my stove goes up all the way to 10, so That would probably be medium low on your stove. I'm not sure, so I believe so. Just try different temperatures on your stove and see what works best for this recipe. And I'm going to cook it for I'm going to let it simmer for 30 minutes because that's how long my rice needs to cook. And sometimes I let it simmer for 40 minutes. It depends, maybe if I roll them too tight, or sometimes they're just a little bit too compact and they need a little longer to cook. Like I said before, when the rice is compact together, it takes a little longer to cook. So you just want to take that into account. And then I'll show you the end result after that. So the cabbage leaves are done cooking, or getting cooked, I should say, because they're not cooking. And now we're gonna try them. So the first thing you're going to do is first watch out for the steam. Uncover it, take it off the heat. I cooked it for about 35 minutes, and that's just because I got distracted with the kids. So take some tongs or maybe the help of a spoon and take the plate out from the pot. Just be very, very careful. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pot right next to my sink so that I don't risk burning myself or breaking the plate. And sometimes what I like to do is just I hold it with a dish towel and I transfer it into the sink that way too. So just take a spoon, and if your plate is smaller than this, then it's probably easier for you. Just make sure it's smaller than the pot because you don't want it to get stuck in the pot, right? Okay, so just take a spoon and pry it out, and then I take my tongs and support it with the spoon on the other side and just carefully transfer it into the sink. So this is how they look like. They're just awesome, amazing. To take the cabbage rolls out of here, what we're going to do is just use our tongs, or sometimes I just use 2 forks, and gently lift it with the tongs, and as you can see, they're holding up really well. There's just a little bit of liquid left at the bottom, and the top layer is my favorite because I don't like the rice to be super cooked. I like it to be a little firm. I lost some rice here. There we go. I'm super hungry, and it's like 4 o'clock right now, but I didn't have a good lunch, and I'm super excited to dig into this thing right here. It's super hot right now. Can you guys see the steam? Yeah, look at that. So good. Delicious. I love this. My favorite are the green leaves, actually. But this cabbage did not have a lot of them. And the first 2 outer leaves, or 3, are usually very tough, and I don't like using them. Sometimes I do if they're good leaves, but they take longer to cook than just the inner leaves. And if you do want to make it the traditional Lebanese way, what you want to do is, unlike me, at the last 10 minutes of cooking time, you crush about 3 to 4 cloves of garlic, and usually that's done using a mortar and pestle, and you pestle, I don't know how to pronounce it. Gotta look that up. And also you put some mint in there and some lemon juice. You mix them all together and you pour it into right over the top of the cabbage rolls, but you do have to remove the plate before you do that step. You can add as much lemon juice as you like, maybe between 1 to 4 tablespoons. It depends how sour you like it. I personally don't like that at all. I don't like the fresh and garlic and mint taste in there added at the end. I don't like the lemon juice in there. I don't. So I skip it altogether. And when I first started cooking, when I first got married and I started cooking this dish, and I was cooking it the way how my mom would cook it for us, and I'm like, I really don't like it, and I would like avoid cooking it. And then I tried so many different variations. I added tomato sauce to it. I removed the lemon juice, but still added the garlic and eventually I just settled on this version where there is no lemon juice, no mint, and no added garlic at the end. Just as it is, as I showed you today. And this is my favorite way of eating cabbage rolls. If you're Lebanese or Mediterranean and cook cabbage rolls the way I said, and you love it that way, it's totally fine. But this is how I like it. Please don't judge me. And again, as usual, you could find this recipe on my blog, and I will leave the link for it in the description box below. And please guys, don't forget to hit the like button if you like this video, and subscribe if this is your first time here to this channel. I cook gluten-free food, and I give you a lot of free gluten-free recipes for you guys and to enjoy, so that you can live your best gluten-free life. And please don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Also, hit the bell so that you can receive notifications. And I'm so glad you decided to join me today, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Now I'm gonna eat. For the garlic, I just take this little piece out. Take it with my fingers. And that's it. It's delicious. I love it. My brothers and I used to compete who would get more garlic out of this dish, and we would all be fishing for them. So delicious. You guys definitely should try this dish. And also don't forget to leave comments on the blog to let me know if you guys tried it, or if you have any questions. You can also leave them down in the comment section down below. If you tried this recipe, let others know so that they could also try it, and let them know what you think about it. Just keep your comments nice, please.